Essex Book Festival podcast. I'll be speaking to some of the people behind this year's festival. My guest today is an author of 2 award-winning crime series, plus a standalone thriller and now a Bond spin-off, and he will be joining us on the 24th of June at Colchester Library. Please welcome Vaseem Khan. Hey.
Hooray!
Hi, it's lovely to have you with us today. So, first off, let's talk about your first series that you wrote, which is about a policeman and his baby elephant.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say how lovely it is to be invited back to the Essex Festival. I sort of consider it as a local festival for me, having grown up in East London, but I went to school in Upminster, which I know is technically Greater London now, but historically has always been Essex. I played cricket all around the county, very badly, I must say. And it's not as if I had a choice being here, Daisy, because as you very eloquently put it, my static picture of my face is not going to sell any tickets. So we've got to make a great effort with this. Okay, so how did I get to this point? So I spent 20 odd years trying to get published, and I'll tell you that harrowing story in a second. And when I was 23, I grew up in London, but when I was 23, I had the opportunity to go out and work in India, which is where my parents were originally from. And I spent 10 amazing years out there watching that country transform itself into the near global superpower that we think of India as today. And when I got back, I thought I would put all of that into a novel. And that became my debut, which was The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra, about a middle-aged policeman who lives in a city of Mumbai, what used to be called Bombay, forced into early retirement in his late 40s, has one last murder to grapple with, like every good detective. But what also happens to him, which is not what usually happens to most detectives in fiction or in real life, is that he inherits a 1-year-old baby elephant on his last day in office. Now, I wrote that book. You have to understand, I wrote that book after 20 years and 7 failed rejected novels. So I never expected it to be published, which is why I put an elephant into a crime novel. But it was published by a big publisher. I ended up on BBC Breakfast talking about it to millions of people, and it set me off on my career. And that book, amazingly, I did 5 books in that series. They're called the Baby Ganesh Agency novels, and they continue to sell all around the world. They were translated into 17 odd languages, and people write to me from all over the place, asking me when I'm going to do another one in that series. And the second thing they always ask me, was more of a threat really, is make sure nothing happens to that damn elephant. So yeah, an unexpected star.
And brilliant. So tell us, you as you were saying, you went through a long journey to get published. What was that like?
Oh God, I think your viewers are going to have to take out their handkerchiefs now. Look, I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was a teenager, and I discovered Terry Pratchett's Discworld series in my local library, which is hence why I love libraries so much. And I thought, this looks really easy, I can do this. And so I wrote a comic fantasy. I sent it off to some agents, age 17. And then I told my parents I'm not going to university because I'm going to be a rich and famous writer, which is probably not the right thing to say to hardworking immigrant parents who want their kids to do better than they did. Anyway, they didn't have to worry. The book was rubbish. It was roundly rejected. And so I did have to go to uni, and I became, as I said, a management consultant, which took me out to India. So all's well that ends well, I guess. I wrote 6 odd more novels during that 20 odd year period, across all different genres, all of them rejected by pretty much every agent in the country at some point. So as I said, I was as shocked as anybody when I was finally published at age 40.
Yeah, wow, that is a long journey that you went on. So you obviously you wrote the Baby Ganesh agency, but then you also write a historical series set in India in the 1950s.
Yeah, so the Malabar house novels came along after I'd written 5 in the Chopra series. And the Chopra novels are set in modern Mumbai, right? Modern India. But what I wanted to know, having lived there for 10 years, is where did this modern India come from? And it turns out that although India is ancient, thousands of years old, a really old culture, the modern India that we see today is largely a function of the period after the British left, because the British were there for about 300 years, and the legacy they left behind completely transformed the trajectory of the country. And so I set these books, the Malabar House novels, beginning with Midnight at Malabar House in 1950 in Bombay, as Mumbai was then called. And it's just a few years after independence in 1947. Gandhi's been assassinated. India is now the world's largest democracy, 300 million Indians, and there's like 1.5 billion now. So you can see how busy they've been in the last 75 years. And it's trying to work out what kind of country it's going to be. And I put into that very messy environment India's first female police detective, Inspector Persis Wadia. She qualifies. Nobody knows what to do with Persis, so they shove her into Bombay's smallest police station, which is called Malabar House. It's a place, Malabar Hill is a place in Bombay. And she's there with a whole bunch of rejects and misfits. And she's working with an English forensic scientist, a handsome chap named Archie Blackfinch, who's there to help the Bombay service set up its own forensic science lab. And between the pair of them, they have to investigate the murder of an English diplomat living in Bombay at the time. And yeah, so these are murder mysteries. There's lots of cryptic clues, but there's also lots of lovely history from that period. And we're up to now book 6 in that series. I'm busy writing the 7th. And what's been fascinating to me is how people have connected with this period and Persis's story as India's first female policewoman, police detective, across the world, not just in Britain, where I thought there would be an interest in this period because of the Raj, but even in places like America and Australia and New Zealand and Canada, where these books sell in big numbers. And at the end of each of these books in the series, I put in 2 pages of the real history that I've used while creating the fictionalized murder plots. And it always amazes people, and they always write to me and say, "Is that really true? Did that really happen?" And it amazes me as much when I do the research and discover these things, and then I feel I have to shove them into a book.
That's amazing. What is it, do you think, that it really, makes people connect with India and with historic India, all over the world?
Well, I mean, Indian culture has made inroads, right? I mean, I read somewhere that our most popular takeaway is now Indian takeaway, right? When people go out, they have an Indian curry. Um, but I also think it's so often when I do talks, there'll be people who come up to me and say, "I'm so fascinated because the stories you're telling us about the India of that period and now the new India, these are stories that either I've experienced when I've traveled to India, or my parents or my grandparents who were out there, my great grandparents might have been stationed out there, might have lived out there. They've handed us those stories. They've handed down those stories to us." And for me, I think that's a point of connection and reference that we, especially in Britain, have with the subcontinent. And when I went to India at age 23, I'd never been, even though my parents were from there, I'd never been. And I was taken out there by this lovely silver-haired gentleman from Kent, my boss, Terry Brewer. And after a while, he pulled me aside and he said to me, "Vaz, I think there's something wrong here. These Indians." And I said, "Oh no, Terry, what have they done to you?" He said, "Well, why are they so happy to see me all the time?" And he was being tongue in cheek. But I said to him, "Look, Terry, Indians are not dwelling on the past. They're not dwelling on the rights and wrongs of the Raj anymore. The country has steamed ahead in the last 75 odd years, or nearly 80 years, and it's forging its own identity in the world. And that's why India is now almost a global superpower. Although, of course, it has many, many legacy issues that we see. Huge slums. If you go to a place like Bombay, the contrast is amazing. You've got these massive skyscrapers, one of the richest homes in the world, which belongs to an Indian billionaire. It's a 27-story tower for him, his wife, and his 2 kids, and his 600 servants. But you can walk a couple of miles down the road and you see this enormous slum, which I visited. So I think bringing those contrasts into these stories is completely fascinating for people.
Yeah, it really sounds it. So, well, obviously, yeah, this is your background. You've written a lot about India, but then as we're going to be talking about your event with us at Colchester Library, From Bombay to Bond. So we're very, very excited about your latest Bond spin-off novel, Quantum of Menace, which is about Q. So I have today with me, in your honour, the Q mug.
Oh my
So
gosh!
this
Wow.
is This is the actual Q mug that Ben Whishaw uses in
No
Skyfall. It's not the
way.
exact one, but it is the same model. Because yeah, that movie came out and I loved it so much, and I really really loved Q, and he is one of my favourite characters. So I'm so excited to be speaking to you today. But yeah, I had to
What?
show you that.
If you had told
But
if you had told me you were personal friends with Ben Whishaw,
and unfortunately, not quite such a claim to fame as yourself. Because yeah, what has it been like to to write this book? You're taking on the mantle of such an iconic British series.
well, it was a huge surprise, I have to say, because I was invited by Ian Fleming's family, his estate, to visit their publishing arm in central London, and I didn't know what I was going for. So of course I got in the door and I thought, "Oh, hello. Has my time come? Are they still looking for a Bond? Because I'm here, ready, willing, and able." It wasn't that. They basically said to me, "Look, we've got this idea. We'd like a series of murder mystery novels, not spy novels, featuring Q, rather than James Bond in the lead. Would you be interested?" And I thought about it for a while, and then I came back with some ideas, and we settled on one of those ideas for the first book in the series, and which is this one, Quantum of Menace, which I can wave to people, and of course, which I'll talk about a lot more when I come along to the festival. But in essence, what's happening here is that Q is booted out of MI6, doesn't know what to do with himself. He's been there for 3 decades, and then he's called back to his small hometown, which is a couple of hours outside of London. Not a million miles in terms of character from Colchester. It's an old medieval market town, a lot smaller than Colchester is now. And he left this town 3 decades earlier, hasn't been back for a reason we discover in the book, but he's come back now because a cryptic letter from his recently deceased childhood friend, Peter Napier, who's a quantum computer scientist, hence the title Quantum of Menace, has drawn him back. Q is convinced that there is more to his death than misadventure, as the police have labelled it, and so off he goes as a sort of amateur detective in this small town, trying to figure out what happened to Peter. And so that's the book in a nutshell. And yes, Commander James Bond does make a cameo appearance in the second half of the book, because that was one of the things I begged the estate to allow me to do. I didn't think they would, but they were more than happy for me to do that.
Yeah, I have been reading the book. I've not quite finished it yet, but I've really been enjoying it. And yeah, I did love there's quite a few little references you've managed to get in there, and then yeah, like I wasn't sure if Bond was going to appear or not, and I was like, oh, he did.
I mean, these books are for, of course, people who love James Bond, who love Q. But as I said, they're not spy novels; they're murder mysteries, and we've pitched them as halfway between Mick Herron's uh, Slow Horses and Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club. So there's lots of dry humor because Q is a dryly humorous man, but he's not a caricature. He's a serious scientist who takes himself very seriously, but he's also a loner. He's got no wife, got no family, and he's come back to his hometown where he's left ghosts behind. And now he has to negotiate with those ghosts again. And one of the things I love, and which is why I love Colchester, is Roman history. And his father is a retired Roman historian, a crotchety 87-year-old former Oxford professor who Q has not spoken to for 3 decades, again, for a reason that we discover in the book. And it's navigating those relationships, which for me was as much fun in writing this book as it was piecing together a proper murder mystery for readers to enjoy.
Yeah, so you've obviously, you have this whole backstory, and yeah, these wonderful characters that you introduced from Q's sort of former life. Q is this really iconic character. He's been portrayed by Desmond Llewellyn, John Cleese, Ben Whishaw, obviously. So how much, when writing the book, how much did you take from those previous portrayals, and how much is new and you've created?
Well, not a lot from John Cleese, who I love for Faulty Towers, etc. But I think his Bond appearances were not quite my cue, because they were quite sort of bumbling, and that's probably why he only lasted a movie and a half or whatever it was. Um, Look, I didn't want to tread on the toes of Desmond Llewellyn or Ben Whishaw, because if you get it wrong, then you've got hordes of Bond fans outside your house chucking bricks through your window. So mine is somewhere in the middle. He's age 50. He's not an action man, but he's occasionally called upon to get into the thick of things. As I said, he's a serious scientist who's been protecting Britain or helping to protect Britain for 3 decades at MI6, running Q Branch, which is the bit of MI6 that creates scientific gadgets and weapons and countermeasures for our secret agents. And now he's lost all of that. He's lost all of that. He's lost his identity in the world, and he really doesn't know what to do with himself, which is one of the reasons why he feels compelled to occupy himself by coming and reinvestigating this mysterious death, which has been put to bed by the cops.
Yeah, yeah, it's you find Q in an interesting place. I think slightly relatable place as well. Someone who's been laid off, and there's sort of a little mention about like he is warned about the threat of AI, and he's not really being listened to. There's obviously that's something a bit relatable in the modern world, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. We're living in this era where technology is moving along, barreling along at such a fast pace. It's almost impossible for ordinary people to keep up with it. But it's Q's job to keep up with it because his job is to figure out how the villains are using AI and quantum computers and all the rest of these modern technologies to commit evil acts. And because of that, he's always railing on about the dangers of these things. However, he's a scientist, so he does believe in technology. He just understands that we need to have certain guardrails in place. And what these books do, the series does, I think, is bring these technologies into focus in a way that I hopefully make it very easy for ordinary readers and ordinary people to understand. So there's not lots of technical jargon about quantum computers in this book, Quantum of Menace, but I do lightly paint for people a picture of what quantum computers are, what they will do, how they will transform our world over the next 10 to 20 years, just as AI, artificial intelligence, is currently transforming the world. But the most fun I had in this book was the human aspects of humanizing Q, because he doesn't appear in the James Bond books very much at all. He's barely there. He makes an appearance in the fifth or sixth book, Dr. No. He's the armorer. His name is Major Boothroyd, and that's my Q's name, Major Boothroyd. His official title is Q, and he's the one who gives James Bond his current gun. But after that, he sort of vanishes, and he appears then in the films, where he's largely a 5-minute skit of things exploding in the lab. But in this book, in Quantum of Menace, we get to understand his backstory. We get to learn his likes, dislikes. We get to understand him as a human being. And one of the most fun things I have, if I can introduce this lovely chap. So this is Q's dog, right? So this is Q's dog, and yes, he does look a bit sad because he's not. He doesn't start off as Q's dog. What happens is Q comes back to his small hometown. It's called Wixton on Water. His next door neighbor, who's a pretty evil guy, who's always shouting at this dog, he dies, and then this dog sort of sits outside Q's house until Q takes him in. Q takes him in, and quickly discovers that this dog is clinically depressed, which I discovered is a real thing. So he had to take him to the vet, who diagnoses him, and then I think this humanizes Q for us because he's never been a pet owner. He's never thought of himself as that kind of person. But now, when the circumstances need it, he's taken on this dog, and he's taken on the responsibility just because he happens to be the only one around. So yeah, had a lot of fun with him. And every good investigator needs a bloody dog, doesn't, or a pet of some description, don't they?
It has to be a sidekick, whether it's a baby elephant or a bulldog.
Or absolutely.
That's wonderful, and obviously, well, there's a second book that's going to be coming out as well. This is obviously a series where what has the response been so far?
It's been fabulous. It really has. You've got Bond fans around the world who've really lent into the book because it was something different. It wasn't a spy novel, as I said. It's a murder mystery. But then you've got this whole range of people who love the Thursday Murder Club, who love Mick Herron's dry humour, and they've bought into the book because ultimately what this is, it's what I hope. It's a good murder mystery for anyone who likes a small town murder mystery, a very English kind of small town murder mystery. But it's also got that edge to it because it's contemporary. Q's in the modern world. We're talking about modern technology behind the scenes. But more than anything else, I think people have loved the portrayal of Q as this very brainy, but now slightly lost man who's a bit at sea, having to navigate social relationships, which he's hidden away from for 3 decades in his lab at MI6. And for me, I think that's been, I've received so many letters, and it's just come out on paperback. I was on a train the other day, and I hadn't realized that my publishers, they told me they were going to do it, but I hadn't realized. But there were huge posters of the book, of Quantum of Menace, the paperback, on the platform and on the train. And it was quite lovely to see them taking it up in such a good way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It is. I do really love like where you have like taken cue. I feel like it is a different portrayal, it's something different to what we've seen. But I think because it's a book, you have the opportunity, as you say, to kind of go deeper into that. Obviously, in the films, he has like a specific role to play, which is just someone who helps Bond with technology. But by the fact that he has his own book now, you get to go into that. You get to go into his backstory and who he is a bit more.
Yeah, and he does such a good job in that first book, that, as you say, that a second book is already written. It will come out in October. It's called The Man with the Golden Compass. I love writing these titles because I've never really been able to keep my titles before. And he's taken on as a civilian consultant, which is a real thing. The police can take on people who have expertise, and he's asked to look into the murder of a tech millionaire who made his fortune creating online virtual gaming environments for adults, and we call it the metaverse. So that's the sort of tech angle in that book. But he's murdered gruesomely at his home, and next to his body, the police discover a round object coated in gold, with and inscribed with runes. So there's a mix of history and modern technology as Q navigates that particular mystery, and that's available for pre-order now, folks. So there you go.
There we go. Yeah, we'll have to get across that one. Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting time for the Bond franchise, as well. Like it's a time where we'll be reimagining soon. Obviously, we know Daniel Craig's era is at an end, and now Bond is in the hand of the Americans, and who knows who's going to be the next Bond. It's kind of like, how is it to be a part of this kind of emerging era?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be Tom Cruise, right? I mean, if he can play Jack Reacher, who's about 8 foot taller than him, surely he can play Bond. Look, I don't know, because that's the one question whenever I meet members of the family. This is the one question I'm not allowed to ask: who's the next Bond going to be? And you're right, Amazon has just bought the rights to the Bond films for about $1 billion, or some enormous sum of money. I think they're going about it in the right direction because they've hired a very respected film director whose films I love, a chap called Denis Villeneuve. And they're busy writing a script. I believe that they have narrowed down the search for the next Bond, but they won't tell me who they've narrowed it down to. So yeah, watch this space. It's definitely not me, in spite of my constant requests. What has Pierce Brosnan? What has Pierce Brosnan got that I haven't got? That's what I want to know.
He's
Other
in the
than good
Thursday
look.
Murder Club. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. No, my wife loves Pierce Brosnan, and she will tell me exactly what Pierce Brosnan has got that I haven't got.
How is it as well? Meeting the family, and that must be an incredible experience.
They're very, very down to earth. They really are very down to earth, lovely people, and it's been wonderful working with them, because I said to them right from the beginning that, look, I can't write a book by committee. It's got to be my book. Yes, I know it's Ian Fleming's character, and I really appreciate being given the honor and the opportunity. But ultimately, he didn't write much about Q, so I have license to create my version of Q, my plot, and they were completely on board with that. And they've just given me helpful pointers here and there. So, for instance, in my first draft, I had Aston Martins in the book, and they said, nope, you can't have Aston Martins because they were a creation of the film. Bond's car in the books was always a Bentley, not an Aston Martin. So I can't have things that were only from the films in the books.
That's really interesting. So is
Yeah.
is this kind of like a copyright thing? You kind of have to.
I think they don't want to tread on the toes of the film company. Simple as that. They don't want them coming back and saying, well, why did you take this idea? Why did you give this idea to Vaz? Yeah, who the hell is Vaz? Essentially is what they're saying, yes.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, how? Because every book book that you've created before has just been completely your own idea, right? You've just had a sort of so this must be quite different, sort of, being invited to something and then having this sort of, is kind of a different process for you.
Yeah, very much so. But as I said, because they've left me largely alone, and it's my plot and it's my version of Q, it hasn't felt that different, except that you've got a few more people looking in and just checking that you haven't done something completely stupid, which believe believe it or not does happen to me more often than you'd think. Again, as my wife says.
Everyone's a critic. I mean,
Yes. Do you know, sometimes I'll be writing a line, and because I use a lot of dry humor in all of my books, the Malabar House novels, the Chopra series, and now the Q series, I'll stop and I'll be chuckling, and then suddenly I'll realize that the door is open and my wife is standing there looking at me, and she said to me before, "You do realize that only mad people laugh at their own jokes."
I mean, if you can't make yourself laugh, then you can't make anyone else laugh, can you? So
Well, thank you, Daisy. You can be my lawyer when we get divorced.
so yeah, obviously we've got, we're going to be talking about all things Q when you come to Colchester Library with us at Essex Book Festival. We're also going to be talking a little bit about another book that you've written, which is The Girl in Cell A, which is quite different as well. That is a psychological thriller, and so it's quite different from Q. And it's also quite different from your crime mysteries that you've written before. What was it like for you to sort of go into another genre like that?
Well, I love psychological thrillers, suspense thrillers, whatever you want to call them. And of course, they're huge at the moment, or have been for the last 20 odd years, ever since I think they got a new lease of life with Gone Girl, and then The Girl on the Train, etc., etc. I also love small town America. Ever since I was a boy, I loved small town American fiction, right from To Kill a Mockingbird to In the Heat of the Night and small town American set films. I love that idea of this claustrophobic community where nothing really changes over decades, and people seem to be polite and reasonable, but under the surface there are dark secrets, because it's impossible to be in such a small community, an insular community, without people rubbing each other up the wrong way. And in The Girl in Cell A, it's set in modern America. It's set in a small town that I made up called Eden Falls, in the southern part of the States. It's an old mining town run by a very rich mining dynasty called the Wyclerks, and then the golden son of that dynasty is murdered. And the daughter of the housekeeper, who's 17 years old, her name is Oriana, she's convicted of the murder, sent off to prison. And then the book proceeds in two tracks. So we have Oriana arriving in prison, and we have the voice of her therapist who's trying to break open Oriana's memory, because she says she can't remember what happened on the day of the murder. So we see that proceeding as we learn about Oriana's life growing up in this town and what might have led to the murder. But then we have another track in alternating chapters where we have Oriana's voice, where she has completed 18 years in prison, comes out, returns to Eden Falls to try and figure out for herself what might have happened that day. So what we have is a murder mystery, we have a big family saga, we have these small town secrets, we have unreliable narrators. Who's telling the truth? Is Oriana telling the truth, or is she not? And of course we have big twists along the way, which is par for the course for psychological thrillers. So I had an enormously fun time researching it, because I had to go to small town America and wander around all of these tiny towns talking to people, which was a really fascinating experience, which I'll talk about when I come to the festival. But ultimately, it's very much about, this is the kind of psychological thriller that people who read Lisa Jewell, Ruth Ware, Callie Taylor, it's the kind of book that I hope that they would enjoy.
Yeah, it sounds really, really, really fascinating, really exciting. What has it been for your readers, who, obviously they're used to kind of a different tone of book for you? How have they embraced it?
Yeah, it seems to have gone down really well. I did wonder, after taking it on, it took me so long to finish, a lot longer than my normal books. It took me 3 years, because I I had to learn how to write a psychological thriller. I'd never written one before. It's bloody hard work, Daisy, bloody hard work. Um, and I made lots of mistakes along the way, but I had great help and advice from friends like Lisa Jewell and Ruth Ware. And hopefully I tidied it up, and it's done well. So people have bought it, people have read it. I never expect everyone to like all of my books. Some people will hate it and want to come around my house and punch me in the face, which is absolutely fine. I'll just put my wife in the way. But for The Girl in Celle, I think it's one of those, because it's one of these books which has these big twists. Either you love a twist or you hate it. So far, most people have loved the twist, and almost no one, not one person so far from the rather large number of books that have been sold, has claimed that they guessed the twist, which is good news. Well, if you do read it, that's your challenge. I would like to know whether or not you got the twist before I told you what it was.
I'm gonna have to like live blog this now and be like, oh, this is what I'm thinking as I
Yeah. Please do. As will all of your viewers have to now. They'll all have to.
I am quite a thriller fan, actually, and that is one of the things I have literally been reading books before, and I've literally yelled out loud what I think is going to happen before I turn the page, because I am one of those readers. I do like to guess a twist if possible, and I have before.
And I've had that same experience with brilliant books, mega best-selling books, and sometimes I love the twist, even though I'd never expected it. Sometimes I never expected it, but I hate the twist. And that's normal, and that's a reaction that we as writers we want. We know not everybody can like what we write, but as long as people are having some sort of reaction rather than giving up after 10 pages and saying this is too boring for words, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's very true. And I mean, obviously, any book that you write, obviously, you're writing crime and mystery, so there's going to be reveals, there's going to be twists and turns along the end, and I suppose you can never really know if people are going to guess it, if people are going to know who the murderer is, or things like that. You just have to. It must be quite an art.
I don't know if it's an art. It's reading a lot of those kind of books, understanding the kind of hooks and reveals and twists that have been previously used, thinking about how you might use it in your own story. There's almost no such thing as a new idea, right? But what you can do is write those new ideas in new ways. And if you do a good job and you disguise things as they go along and give lots of red herrings and pull people down the wrong track, when you do the big reveal at the end, hopefully it still comes as a massive twist. What you want is that jaw-dropping moment for readers, as you've just described, and love it or like it, you just want them to say, I did not guess that. I hate it, but I did not guess it. Or I love it, and I did not guess it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like of all books, I do feel like, a thriller and crime can really elicit a strong emotion in a way that not every genre can.
No. There you go.
Yeah.
Big twists.
Yes. So you're going to be talking about that at Colchester Library on 24th of June when you're coming with us at the Essex Book Festival. We are really pleased that you're going to be joining us there. Colchester Library has just been refurbished. It was closed for a year and it opened again in December. So it's really lovely that we're having such a wonderful event with you there. Why we want everyone to come, we want everyone to experience it. What are you most looking forward to about this event?
Well, now that you've described this refurbishment, I'm expecting some sort of storybook castle for this library. Look, I love libraries because I wouldn't be a writer today without libraries. We had no money when I was growing up, and certainly my dad he didn't have any spare cash to buy me books. So it was only when I got to the libraries around about age 8 or 9 that I could find a whole range of books. And as I said, that led me to Terry Pratchett's Discworld, which led me to write my first novel age 17, and that's when I knew what I wanted to do, in my life, be a writer. So I'm really looking forward to it. Libraries are under threat around the country, so it's amazing to hear of a library that has had lots of money pumped into it for refurbishment, is doing well, and looks like a palace apparently now. I also love the idea of coming along to Colchester because, as I said, I love Roman history, and What's the old name for Colchester? Was it Camulodunum? Is that is it Camulod? Camulodunum? Oh God, you're better at this than I am. But I'm sure I read a while back that you discovered all sorts of lovely things like sort of chariot race circus ruins. I love the idea of being a chariot racer. Honestly, I can't even ride a horse, but I love the idea of being on the back of a chariot. I think that's what should be organised for my talk. We should have a chariot race to the death with some of the other authors who are attending. That'll bring the punters in. We won't need to do any more of these videos. That'll bring the. If you just put that out there, Vaz will race to the death in a chariot race like Ben Hur. You can charge what you like for that.
Is there any other authors that you have like a rivalry with?
It's got to be somebody that I can beat easily, right? It's got to be somebody really unfit, who probably is not very good at throwing spears off the back of a chariot, that sort of thing. That's what we want.
Well, we have, we have some authors who I think might be up for it. We've got Giles Brandreth. He is doing an event at Chelmsford Cathedral. If
Bring him
anyone
on.
could race a chariot, you know what?
Yeah, bring Giles on. Bring Giles on. You know what? Bring him on. Yeah, spear through the heart. No, I didn't mean that, Giles. Please don't beat me up.
You have a lot to answer for when he comes and speaks about Winnie the Pooh. So
I love Winnie the Pooh. Oh, I love Winnie the
yeah,
Pooh. It was my
he's
favourite
written a
bear.
whole
So
book
out of the
about
three
it.
bears, Rupert the Bear, Paddington Bear, and Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh was always my favourite. Although he did wander around without any pants on. So maybe that's why he was my favourite, because, sometimes that just happens. Usually
I feel
not.
like we're learning a lot about you today.
Yes. Yes. To be clear, that doesn't usually happen at author events, people.
Not usually, but a special occasion. Well, Colchester Library, it doesn't look like a palace now, but there is a soft play now. There's a children's imagination and story area, so,
Well, is this for your incredibly posh toddler? So I've just learned, ladies and gentlemen, that Daisy has the world's poshest toddler. I won't give his name away in public, but he's got a triple-barreled name and the poshest first name I've ever heard. My goodness me! I feel like I should curtsy or something when I touch my forelock when I meet him.
Wayne, I'm coming along to the event. I'm not sure if he will. It's a little bit past his bedtime, but I will pass on
Oh, I
my
see.
regards.
Oh, it's bedtime at the palace. It's bedtime at Buckingham Palace, is it? Dear, oh dear.
He does have expensive taste. Don't all children, really. So we are very excited to have you with us at Colchester Library, part of the Essex Book Festival. We are having over 100 events, over 40 venues over the month of June. So we're quite a unique festival. It's not a weekend. We're not in a tent. It's a really sort of wide thing, and it's all over the county of Essex. What is special to you about the Essex Book Festival?
Well, as I said, for me, I do events around the country, around the British Isles. I do events abroad in America and Middle East, other places. I mean, I was at the Emirates Literature Festival earlier this year, and that's got its own character. Really, really amazing events that they put on. But I live in East London, and as I said, I went to school in Upminster. I play cricket all year. I play in what is called the Hambro League, which is Essex's premier amateur league. So every weekend I'm down in Southend or Basildon or Orsett. So for me, it very much feels like coming to a home festival. And I think more than anything else, it's the fact that the good people of Essex have a sense of humour, I think, about life in general. And because when I do my presentation, so it's a slideshow with lots of lovely pictures of Indian history, which we'll go through, and America, and all sorts of other things that we're talking about as part of my books. I think people get really engaged with it, and I think if you've got a sense of humour, because I have one too, then we end up having a really good laugh for an hour, and that's how I view Essex, because that's been my life ever since I was going to school in Upminster.
Well, we're really excited to have you with us, and it will be a really great event, even if there's no chariots.
Yeah. And even if I've got my pants on, yes.
we need to put that on the posters. That's what it's missing.
Yeah. But let's put a rider there to say that this is Winnie the Pooh's fault, not Vaz's fault.
Yeah, we'll just blame it all on him. So how can everybody who's interested, how can they find you and all of your books online?
Well, if you Google my name, Vaseem Khan, you'll come across my website, my socials. I'm on all the socials, and it's pretty easy to find my books. Maybe harder to find some change down the back of the sofa to buy one of them, but I urge you to do so. Look, I mean, I don't take anything for granted, right? I spent so long trying to get published that for me, although things have gone really well over the last 11 odd years since my first book came out, I still, for every reader who spends their hard-earned money on one of my books, spends 4 or 5 hours or however long it takes to read a novel, I think that's a really wonderful thing. Even if they don't like the book ultimately, I still thank them for putting all of that time and effort and money into it. It's still a great thrill for me, which is why I love doing so many events. Because yes, I've had bestsellers and I've had reviews in national newspapers and all the rest of it, but just the interaction of people in an audience who you can talk to and ask questions about their lives as much as your own, I think that's just the best part of being an author for me anyway.
Oh, it's going to be a really great event, and we are really, really looking forward to it. And I will say goodbye to you now. And yeah, just a last thing: 24th of June, Colchester Library. If you're interested, come along. Lovely to speak to you today. Thank you.
Thanks, Daisy.